This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy walawa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon.
And welcome to that post-game show out west for that team out west. I'm Ted LaRue. What matters in the end, folks? What really matters? We're going to talk about everything that happened on the football field out there at Martin Stadium on the lakefront here in this post-game show. But what really matters is that Oregon scores more points than Northwestern. Okay, this game looked a lot different. It looked a lot different. 59 points against Montana State. Oregon is able to do anything that they absolutely want at will against an FCS opponent. Last week, Oregon able to do absolutely everything at will against maybe one of the bottom tier teams in the Big 12, putting up 69 on the Cowboys. Ducks win. They're 3-0. That's what's important. But that positive love fest that's maybe been going on the last couple of weeks to open up the season here on TSOW, not sure if you're going to find that here, because this was a really good learning experience for Oregon to be able to get better later on in the season. But more on that as this show progresses. Welcome in to that post-game show out west. We're going to get into my takeaways here shortly. I'm going to highlight some top performers in this 20-point Big Ten opening win for the Ducks. And then that's where you come in. I do have the TSOW text line. The text portion of this show is open. So 541-357-6390. That's 541-357-6390. Once we get past a few of these first segments, that's when the talk version of the talk portion of the TSOW talk and text line will open as well. So make sure you put your thoughts into there. I know maybe it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but folks, not every day can be Christmas. Not every game even if you're as good as Oregon is, and Oregon is a damn good team. And I know I'm going to get into some things later in this show that really stood out to me that didn't look great. At least maybe consistently didn't look great like we've seen in these last couple of games. But this is still a damn good team. This is still a team that's going to be able to improve. And it's when you play in a conference like the Big Ten, it is going to be a grind each and every single week. You go on the road. These are the things that's going to happen, even in a sleepy environment like Northwestern. And that's where I want to start when I dive into my takeaways. Of course, last season, the first season for the Oregon Ducks within the Big Ten Conference. This year, year number 2. Over this time, Oregon has been maybe learning some things about the new league that they're playing, and maybe some initiations a little bit, maybe some welcome to the Big Ten type of moments. And this was another one of them. Okay, because whether there's been teams like Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan or some of the top teams in the Big Ten, whether they've been that good or whether they've been towards the bottom of the league, every team goes into a 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern game in Evanston, Illinois, and has a performance like this. They have a sleepy start. But if we're going to take a positive away from maybe this sleepy start for Oregon, they found a way to adjust as this game was able to progress. In previous games, the Ducks had these scorching starts. Second play of the game last week, Noah Whittington goes 59 yards for a touchdown, and you got the Autzen Stadium crowd behind you. You found the energy. You found the juice right off the bat. In this game, Oregon sends James Ferguson Reynolds. That's a punter, by the way. We haven't seen much of him. They send James Ferguson Reynolds out at the end of the first drive, and that was very different. There was a lot of parts of this game that were just, that's a little bit different. Ooh, that's a little bit different. Haven't seen much of that from this team. How are they going to get over this this first little roadblock, this second little roadblock, this third little roadblock, and all of that? And all things being considered, I thought Oregon, over those smaller roadblocks, I thought they did a pretty good job at kind of jumping over those as the game was able to progress. Now, We talked about finding the energy in the preview, and I just talked about finding the energy now. There were instances throughout this game, there were plays made throughout this game where Oregon was able to find that energy. You talk about Bryce Betcher's interception. I believe that was their second defensive drive of the game. That led to a touchdown because at that moment in the game, Northwestern's doing some good things on the offensive line. They're doing some good things in the run game. They're moving the football a little bit, and that kind of halted it. There were points where Northwestern was maybe building that momentum a little bit, and the Ducks shut the door and kind of flipped it back the other way. That Bryce Betcher's interception was one of that. You go to the start of the third quarter. Northwestern comes out. Oh, here they go. Looks a lot like the beginning of the game, in the first quarter. Right in the third quarter. They're moving the ball. They're running the football. Offensive line for the Purple Cats. They're getting that push. They're doing their thing. Right? And then comes that drop pass. I think it was like a 4th and 9 from the Wildcats. Would have given a first down near the red zone, definitely inside the 30, I think, at that point in time as well. But that failed 4th down. Next play, 66 yards, boom, the other way. There goes De'Aaron Hill. That was a 2-play sequence that I think found a big-time boost and some big-time energy for the Ducks at that point in time as well. And then Jerry Mixon had an interception later in the ball game that led to a touchdown. So just little instances, little roadblocks that they were able to get out of, to be able to jump over, find that energy, and eventually kind of create that gap that they were able to create throughout this game. So you combine the 10,000, 12,000 seat stadium. You combine the sleepy atmosphere, windy. Sounds like it was pretty windy by the lake throughout this game as well. But then, like I was just talking about, the Wildcats' ability to run the ball, eat a lot of time off the clock. Like there were a limited amount of possessions for Oregon in this game. A lot less first quarter, second quarter, first half type of possessions to be able to get a lot of that momentum that they've been able to get early in games than they've had before. So you got to give credit to Northwestern's front to be able to do that. And then holy crap. Now this is maybe I did watch the Texas-Ohio State big noon game to start the season, but there were a lot of TV timeouts. There were a lot of commercials. It was very start and stop. Okay, you'd have a punt commercial, you'd have a short drive punt commercial. There was a lot of times throughout this game where Oregon just was not able to get a rhythm. When you combine the sleepy environment, when you combine Northwestern being able to run the football, Oregon not getting into a rhythm early, because from a TV standpoint, okay, like these last few games, Montana State, Oklahoma State. Like if Oregon goes down, they get into the end zone and they do it 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, whatever it is in the first quarter. That allows the networks to take those television breaks at that point in time. But if teams aren't getting out to that fast start, teams aren't getting out to a bunch of those scores, now these producers have to find a way to jam in a lot of these breaks in a 1-possession game in the first half to keep the viewer engaged and get the most out of their ads. And that's kind of what happened. So I think you put all of that in a pot, you mix it up, you put it in a pan, I should say. You put it in a pan, you mix it up, you put it in the oven, you pull it out, and that's the recipe for, I think, that little bit of a sleepy start for Oregon within this game. This looked like Northwestern Super Bowl to a certain extent. Northwestern came out, I think they played with a lot of energy early in this game. They played with a lot of fire. David Braun was more aggressive in this game, I think, that he's been at other points during his Northwestern career, and it looked like Oregon's first road game against a Big Ten team across 2 time zones with a young team against a scrappy opponent. That's exactly what it was when all was said and done. But they were able to overcome some of these obstacles. They were a much more talented team, and of course you saw that throughout this entire game. Okay, here's the second point. Questionable trenches. I want to start first with Oregon's defensive line, because if I'm looking at like maybe which one is a bigger concern coming out of this game, I'm leaning towards the defensive front. Now, first drive of the first quarter, first drive of the third quarter, those are ones that really stand out to me. There were certainly other drives where Northwestern had a lot of success running the football. Now, this was the biggest offensive line that Oregon had seen thus far this season. Talking about guys that are 6'5", averaging 6'5", 311 pounds in there. they were able to establish the run. Like guys like I remember seeing Terrence Green getting just driven 3 yards off the football, 4 or 5 yards off the football. Bear Alexander, I remember something from that, him getting knocked off the football quite a bit as well. And then that's where you saw these running backs able to just methodically move the football down the field. The Wildcats' top 2 backs combined for 112 yards and 28 carries. That's an average of 4.1 yards per carry. They had that long touchdown run at the end of the game as well. So that's something that we saw towards the end of last season. Okay, once again, the Ducks getting the victory, but that Big Ten championship game, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, they ran the ball really well. Penn State was able to lean up front of the offensive line. Okay, they were able to have a lot of success running the football. Stopping the run was an emphasis. Bryce Betcher said it. Dan Lanning said it. A lot of people said it leading up to this, throughout fall camp, leading up to this season. This is not, the best indication coming out. Now, maybe a little bit of inconsistency. There were times where they were able to get into the backfield. They were able to penetrate. They were able to get some tackles for loss, certainly in there as well. But that's something that I think Oregon fans and the Oregon coaching staff, they're going to circle that. You see that? We have to get better at the line of scrimmage. This is a really good Oregon defensive line. Okay? And this was maybe, if you want to call it their first true test against the run. I know Montana State liked to run the ball a lot, but that was a smaller, of course, a lower level of an offensive line as well. Let's move to the other side. Let's talk about the Oregon's offensive line right now. I thought they were knocked back at times in pass protection, but you got to give this offensive front, you got to give them the credit. They still got the goose egg in the sack column. They still did enough to allow Dante Moore to be able to fire the ball down the field and have an effective game moving the ball down the field. That, of course, led to some good offensive possessions and some points down the field as well. Then early in the contest, they struggled to run the football. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to tackle with this. Once again, maybe not getting that push up front. And these are big guys up front, okay? They had the size advantage up front on the offensive line. So it wasn't that. Like I said, Oregon's defensive line was facing the biggest offensive line that they'd seen so far. That was not the issue. I have to go back and dive into the rewatch and dive into the film a little bit to see exactly what the issue was. But watching this game live, they weren't getting that push to start the game. Now, they did not have Noah Whittington. One thing I've said about Noah throughout this season is he explodes through the hole. He hits the hole really quick, and he's that really good combination of power and speed. He was not available during this game. So you got Jaden Lamar back there. You've got Jay Harris back there. I think Mekhi Hughes only had 1 carry in this game. When Noah Whittington wasn't playing, and we're seeing Mekhi on the field, he was like if you want to call it a 3A and a 3B with Jay Harris throughout the early part of this game. I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time for Mekhi to really take the bull by the horns and do it, and that didn't happen. That didn't happen throughout the course of this football game as well. So I think it proved Jaden Lamar, and I said this, I think throughout the spring, I said it throughout fall camp, and I'm like, he seems very situational to me. Although he's playing a lot better to start the year, like that's a guy that you need to get him out in space. You kind of need to scheme him open. They say that a lot about wide receivers, but I think when I'm talking about Jaden Lamar, they need to scheme him open with abilities for him to get out in the field and really showcase his speed. Like he's not a guy that you're going to depend on. Now, this is not Oregon's running back room at all this year, but he's not a guy that you're going to depend on to carry the ball 15 times, 17 times, 18, 19, whatever times. He's not going to be a bell cow. That's just not what he's going to be, and I think today was an example of that throughout this contest as well. But the trenches, those are things that are going to be circled going forward, as this was certainly not what maybe you wanted to see in this type of first Big Ten game against a team like Northwestern that's going to be probably towards the bottom of the Big Ten as the season progresses. Now, we take all of that. Some questions, some positives. Let's just get a big macro point to finish off my takeaways. Folks, this was a learning experience. I would much rather have a learning experience winning by 20 than maybe, for example, last year's game at Wisconsin. 16-13 and a nail biter going down to it. Okay. I said it in my first part of this takeaway segment. Oregon overcoming a lot of obstacles throughout this contest. Dante Moore continuously finding guys down the field when maybe the pocket was shrinking, maybe the pocket was collapsing a little bit more than it had those first 2 weeks as well. This game, it shows us a lot. I almost would rather have a game. Now, you always want to see Oregon play their best, but I would rather, with Oregon State next week at Autzen, and then, of course, everybody's looking to that 5th game of the year when they play the Penn State Nittany Lions. I would almost rather have a game like this where I know, okay, this, and this we need to work on the defensive line. We need to get better at that. This, and this is what we need to be able to clean up, what we need to be able to fix up front on the offensive line as well, and just the bullet list of things that they need to be able to clean up. There were some things. There were some deep pass plays where, kind of Preston Stone just kind of chucked it up a little bit, and they were able to get some of those big chunk yardage plays over the top. There was one, I know Naeem Offord kind of slipped a little bit. Offord is kind of one guy with high expectations coming into the season. I think maybe he's still got a little bit of growing to go to maybe be able to reach where maybe someone like Brandon Finney is this year. I think there's a reason. What I've seen thus far, and I think this game was another example, there's a reason why Brandon Finney is where he's at in the starting lineup, and maybe why Naeem Offord is in that second group of guys as well. But this is an experience where Oregon is going to be able. Let me put it this way: you can take a lot more out of this game than you can the last 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks, okay, we just completely trounced somebody. You don't learn anything from that. Okay, I'll maybe use myself as an example, and I appreciate everybody that leaves me positive comments. Everybody says, oh, you're doing great, this is great, that's great, awesome. But then when somebody says, hey, love your show, maybe work on this next time. Maybe do something like that next time. And whether it's somebody hosting the podcast or whether it's you at your job or whatever it is, you learn more from that feedback. Maybe things aren't going completely perfect. So when you get into those situations where you absolutely have to deliver, like Oregon will be in a couple of weeks, that's what you need to be able to work on. And you saw it and you learned from it at this point, and you're going to be able to correct it and go forth and hopefully be a better team when all is said and done. This game is going to allow this coaching staff to really evaluate things and for this team to maybe be better when all is said and done. But overall, a win is a win. It's all about getting the W. Maybe not the most impressive win in the world, but man, that's just for a really odd reason. Northwestern, it's just a tough environment to go into and have just a A+ type of performance. It just is. It always has been, and it always will be. But of course, we're happy the Ducks get it done and move on to 3-0. I want to advance to some of my top performers in this matchup. We got to talk about Dante Moore, of course. I mean, Dante made some gutsy throws throughout this game. There were parts of this offense, run blocking wasn't getting the push. Said that. Run lanes weren't opening up. Okay, so Dante's got to go back there and he's got to make some plays. And that's what you want to see out of a quarterback like this. Was his kind of first situation where maybe everything isn't just clicking 1,000%. And Dante's got to go back there and find a play. Find a way to maybe move outside of the pocket, make a throw on the run, hang in there, get to your second read, get to your third read, deliver it down the field, make the right decisions. Dan Lanning said that off camera. I was reading through Twitter. He said it on the radio broadcast at the halftime interview as well. He said it to Jenny Taft as well off camera. So Dante, this gave me a really good feeling about Dante Moore going forward. I know he had that interception a little bit later on, and then he was taken out of the game, but the game was kind of a little bit later, a little bit out of hand at that point. But I thought he did a really good, when somebody needed to hang in there and do something, Dante Moore is the guy that sparked this offense. Dante Moore is the guy that got them moving down the field when maybe other parts of the offense weren't doing as well. That's going to happen. It could happen against Indiana. It could happen against Penn State. It could happen against Rutgers. It could happen against USC, Washington. It could happen against all these teams. So for Dante to really rise up in that type of situation, You absolutely love to see that. Okay, let's talk about Deer Hill. So, as I mentioned before, no Noah Whittington in this game. I think kind of the way this thing shook out, Noah's clearly the number one guy. And I think they missed him a little bit today. I know there were some people that said, well, offensive line didn't open up any holes. And I get that. But but Noah's ability to hit the hole maybe a little bit faster, more downhill than some of these guys, that was certainly missed, I think, throughout this ball game as well. But Jaden Lamar, Jay Harris, Mekhi Hughes, some of these other guys, you can go down the list. You can absolutely go down the list of these running backs, man. I think Deer Hill is the most talented of them all. I really do that. They need to find a way. I don't know what they have to do. I don't know if it's limiting carries for Jaden Lamar. I don't know if it's even cutting into maybe Noah Whittington. I don't know what they have to do. But Will Stein, please find a way to get 23 to touch the ball more consistently. When Deer Hill has touched the freaking football this year, good things happen. Okay, 5 carries, 94 yards, a touchdown. Of course, he had that 66-yard run for a touchdown. I think when we're talking on Monday about who's winning my Holy Wallawa Performers of the Week, a little bit of a hint, Dier might be in that conversation. So he's a guy, it's just like he's so electric in space, but I think he's like, for what he is as a true freshman, he's a very complete running back right now. And I want to see him get involved more. I think now Noah Whittington, Deer Hill, Jaden Lamar, short yardage, Jordan Davison, which isn't very different from, I think, how I felt about this even like last week or a couple of weeks ago. But I just want to see Deer Hill get the ball more. I think this run game is going to be able to produce more chunk plays when 23 gets his hand at the ball. So hopefully Will Stein, he's much smarter at football than I am. I'm sure he'll find a way to get Deer more involved as this thing goes on. Malik Benson, DeCorian Moore, a couple of guys with 4 catches throughout this game. Benson, 4 catches, 62 yards. He keeps on finding a way to get open. You love to see that. DeCorian, 49 yards today. Let's talk about Jerry Mixon. I freaking love Jerry Mixon. I love this guy. When we're talking about an athletic linebacker next to Bryce Betcher this season, who are we talking? We're talking about Devin Jackson. But what Jerry is doing right now, he got his second interception in as many games. He's all over the field. He's going sideline to sideline. There's a reason why he's in the spot that he is right now. He's playing damn good football. And I love having Jerry with Bryce and where he's at in the middle of that defense. Bryce Betcher also had an interception, as we covered before. Let's break down the box score a little bit more. Of course, in this 20-point victory for the Ducks, Dante Moore, 16 of 20, 170 yards, touchdown. He had that interception late, as I mentioned. Kenyon Sadiq, he had a touchdown grab in this one, going right down the seam. 2 catches, 35 yards. Bryce Betcher, mentioned him before, he had an interception, 5 tackles. How about Mateo Uyangalele getting his 3rd sack of the season? Also 3 tackles throughout this contest as well. We kind of break down the team box score a little bit. Oregon's defense did really well on 3rd downs. 3 of 11 the Wildcats were in this one. So I said this in the preview, there was a lot of things as I'm watching this game. I'm like, this is exactly how Northwestern needed to play when I talked about it in my preview. I talked about Northwestern needs to run the ball effectively on 1st downs. They need to create manageable 3rd downs. And they need to play soft coverage and keep everything in front of them. And they did a really good job of that early on throughout this game. Oregon outgained Northwestern 373 yards to 319. Rushing was fairly even, although, it was really padded with some late big rushes from Northwestern. 178 yards for the Wildcats, 176 yards for the Ducks. I'll say this about Oregon. Goose egg in the penalties department. 0 penalties. That's something where, so if you're looking for, the defensive line or the offensive line, right, it was questionable trenches, as I said before, if you're looking for that to get better, there's some optimism, because last week there were some pre-snap penalties, there was some stuff that they needed to clean up in terms of that, and they cleaned it up this week. So hopefully they can maybe take what we saw, what was questionable this week, and clean it up before they get to Happy Valley. 1 turnover for the Ducks, 2 turnovers for Northwestern. The Wildcats won the time of possession 32 minutes and 18 seconds. The Ducks had 27-42 throughout this matchup as well. Okay, let's dive in to the chats. Let's dive into the TSOW talk and text line because there certainly are some things to be able to talk about. Okay, let's get into the TSOW text line here first, and I will open, there it is, I will open the TSOW talk line. So call in 541-357-6390. That's 541-357-6390. This coming in about 20 minutes ago. Ross from Salem, Oregon, the capital city. This game felt like Lanning left his killer instinct in Eugene. Somebody tell that to Dan, by the way. Somebody take this clip, send it to Dan Lanning, and be like, hey, Ross and Salem think you lost your killer instinct. That'll really rev him up for next week. That'll really rev him up the rest of the season. Before we get to that, we got a call coming in, so we'll get to the TSOW talk line here right now. You are on that post-game show at West. Who's calling today, and where are you from?
My name is Kingston.
Kingston, how are you doing today?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Kingston?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, what's on your mind today?
I would like to talk about our run defense because I feel like we need to do way better if we want to stop Penn State in the future because they have a great running game. They have two great running backs.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to tighten up the defensive line and get set.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Penn State because I'm not sure if I brought up Penn State before. That's something that I'll really be watching next week against Oregon State. I don't think they have a very good run game really at all, but it's something that I'll kind of have my eye on. Like that Penn State, if you know, like you were saying, if that's not shored up, I mean, you go on the road into that environment. We saw what happened last year where they rushed for nearly 300 yards. I think they were just over 300 yards in that game. And there was a focus for Oregon coming in to this game as well. So, and it all starts up front. It all starts on the defensive line throughout this country. Does this kind of give you, as you look forward to Penn State, does this kind of give you a big concern with that? Or do you kind of have confidence that Tosh is going to be able to maybe clean this thing up a little bit?
I feel like Tosh can clean it up. I just feel like our 2D tackles, I feel like if we would pinch the D-line, it would make them bounce outside, and our athletes would be able to stop the run.
Yeah, and that's that's a good point. Is kind of driving, using your size. I mean, we know how big Amari is. What, 6'4", 336, something like that. I mean, Tion Gray, Terrence Green, like these are all huge dudes. And to be able to kind of use that size to pitch things to the middle, and then you rely on the speedier linebackers. Okay, we know Devin Jackson is a superior athlete. We know Jerry Mixon. I was just talking about him. And maybe some of these they talked about it during the broadcast. Some of these safeties coming into the box. We've got Kingston on the line. Kingston Lopa is a guy that's been able to be really good playing near the line of scrimmage this season as well. So then it's up to those guys to be able to step up and make the play. Kingston, here quickly before you go and get to some more of the show. What was kind of, if you could give an overall grade for the Ducks in this one, what would you give them?
I would give us a B-.
B-. I can live with that. I think it's certainly above a C in this one, but I think B- is a good one. Kingston, thanks for calling in today.
Thank you for letting me use your time.
Thank you, Kingston, for being involved here on the TSOW talk line as well. So, hey, he kind of made a good point with the size of this group up front of the defensive line. They got to use that to their advantage. And then what do you have from athleticism to be able to finish the play out there? But we were just kind of getting back things from Ross here. Ross from Salem, Oregon. I will not forget you. He says, seems conservative, pulled the starters a little bit too early. It's a win, but not a championship performance. And I think he knows that. That's not lost. I watched his interview. I made sure, because I knew Jenny Taft was going to interview him after the game. I made sure to watch that. And he did not look happy. He did not look like a happy guy. I remember seeing Ducks versus them against Idaho last year. And I think the main talking point was like, hey, great, we got the win. That's not our standard. They talk about it all the time in Eugene. Standard. Got to live up to the standard. My hope is that Dan, we know the master motivator. We all know what happened last week. My hope is that Dan can take this and use this as a boost towards the rest of the season. And just let me say this about next week. Okay, we know the Civil War will not be played next season. They're trying to get it figured out for 27 and beyond. But right now, I think Dan is going to find a way to take this subpar performance from the Ducks this year or this week, and he's going to find a way to Saban and Kirby this thing and be like, you guys got a big head. Maybe you weren't as good as you. I'm not saying this is what I think about Oregon. I'm just saying this is what Dan might say to really give this team a lot more juice coming out into Autzen next Saturday when they face Oregon State, and say, hey, we got a lot to work on, man. We got a long way to go. All right, so let's start turning it up a notch after a performance like this. So, Ross, thank you for texting in here on the TSLW talk and text line today. So I'm going to try to really alternate here. We got a call, we got a text. I got to get into the chat before it gets a little bit too far down here a little bit. Let's go to Nick P. If I'm Penn State, I'm leaving my quarterback on the sideline. I'm going Wildcat all game. I'm going Wild Lion. The Ducks can't stop a 10-year-old from running the ball. Oh, man, we're getting spicy. We're getting spicy today from Nick. Oregon is going to get embarrassed. Okay, we need to take this on a couple of sides. People were saying, hey, Montana State, Oklahoma State, we need to take that with a grain of salt. I think we need to take this with a grain of salt. This is still a young team. This is game 3 of the season. I think a lot of people, including myself, Joel Klatt, who was on the broadcast, said it as well in his show this week, how impressed he was with Oregon and what they've been. But this is a long season, folks. And this is still a team with a lot of youth and maybe a team with not a lot of experience. And I'll say that this is going to be a learning experience. But in the vein of what Nick is going to say, what he's saying right there, Penn State brings back a lot on their offensive line from last year. This is a team that can run the football really effectively. That's something. If they want to go into Happy Valley and get a win, it's something that needs to get better over these next 2 weeks. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Does Oregon is this a game on the road in Happy Valley? They could do it at a neutral site in Indianapolis last year. But can they do a game like last year where they, maybe give up 300 yards, but other parts of the team can maybe take advantage of it in a game against Penn State? I'm not sure. In a whiteout, we'll see. We got a long way to go. But that's something, Nick says it here to kind of kick things off in the live chat, and I think a lot of people are going to be saying that over the next 2 weeks. How is Oregon's run defense going to improve as we get going? LFBP Fishing says you can't judge the run game by the final quarter. Yeah, fourth quarter. Dan kind of pulled a lot of guys at that point in time. Yes, there were issues. But the main rotation played well enough to keep the average to about 2 or 3 yards until the fourth quarter. Well, as I was saying before, the top 2 running backs in this top 2 running backs had 4 yards of carry. So I think overall, you need to look at this game and say there's a lot to work on. Is it just a lack of energy? Is that what it was? In a couple of weeks when Oregon goes to Penn State and there's 100,000 people, everybody dressed in white, are you going to find the juice and are you going to play better? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know. We just got to let it happen. All right, let's go back to the TSLW text line right now. Once again, the number 541-357-6390. That's 541-357-6390. Also, call-ins accepted like we saw from Kingston earlier before in the program. This is Josh from Springfield. Josh says, not pulling the alarm bells yet. Well, that's good. That's good. Northwestern played that exactly how you would have too. Limited Oregon possessions, aggressive early, like these are things that I said to kind of kick off the program. Oregon absolutely controlled the game until garbage time. Not to mention time zone, early game, glorified high school stadium. Anybody who is worried is the casual fan. Okay, so we're coming off. Josh is pulling some punches from this Eugene suburb, and I like it. These are conversations. When things aren't going like they did the first 2 weeks, I think it's important to be able to talk. I think it's important to be able to have these types of conversations. But kind of going back to what he was able to say, maybe a little bit of a formula drawn out by some people is like, okay, if we keep Dante Moore off the field, if we feel like we've got a good front, we can dominate the time of possession, and that's maybe something that we can use to attack Oregon going forward. So Oregon's got to find a way to prevent that from happening. To say, hey, how do we play in that type of game against a really good team, right? If it's Penn State in a couple of weeks, or if it's somebody else a little bit later on in the season, or if it's during the playoff or something like that, they got to be able to play in that type of game. But I thought, as I said a couple of times throughout the show already, but I'm kind of coming back here. I thought that Oregon did a good job adjusting to what this game was going to be. I think it was clear what Northwestern wanted to do early, and Oregon's be like, okay, we just don't maybe have that buzz. We don't have that energy. We know that we're going to have to power through for 60 minutes throughout this game, and they did that late in the first quarter, and then of course early in the middle of the second half as well. So props to them, I think, for being able to get that done. Duck fan down south says Oregon's defensive philosophy is to stop the run. It didn't seem like it all game. We've been hearing a lot from that. And I think I'm going to have my eye on that next week. Once again, I don't know how good Oregon State is going to be. I haven't watched the Beavers yet this season. I don't think that's going to be much of a test, especially at home. But we'll keep an eye on it and see exactly what happens out there. So, yeah. What do we know? We know it's got to get better. That's what we know. Ducks fan 77 chimes in. Lanning didn't seem too happy the way the players played today from his post-game interview. And that ties in, I think, to what I said is maybe the type of performance we could see next week from Oregon against Oregon State, where they come out and they just play pissed off. And they maybe get things going back on the right track. And then you get to Penn State. And then I think if that happens, you're kind of sitting and be like, okay, we saw this game against Northwestern. It was what it was against Oregon State. Now, which version are we going to get when we go to Happy Valley and face Penn State? Douglas Witt saying, bring on the Civil War. Duck fan down south once again saying the lines didn't get much of a push today. Doug also chiming in saying Northwestern didn't lay down. That is like, even before with Pat Fitzgerald and the teams that he coached all those years, it was a scrappy squad. You kind of had to go out there and you had to play harder than you think you would have going into it. But that's the way Northwestern has been, and they've kind of carried that over, certainly in the David Braun era. Mike chiming in, wish Stein would have opened the playbook a little bit more. This play calling is too conservative at time as well. So I noticed that. I thought maybe he wasn't as creative to start this game off, and maybe doing some of the things that he did throughout the first two games. Not sure. I'd have to go in the rewatch. I'd have to rewatch exactly, see what they do formationally, see what they do, from a play calling sequence. Because what do we know about Oregon? I mean, they can have a personnel package on the field. You can have Sadiq, Benson, Moore, whatever, whoever's on the field, and they can do so many different things. We didn't see a lot of that creativity throughout this game. I'm not sure if because it was just limited possessions and limited opportunities to kind of mix things up and kind of do what they wanted to do. Did they kind of realize what type of a game this was going to be earlier? I don't know. I'll have to go in the rewatch and kind of see what this thing is all about. Got a couple more texts coming in. We got a text from Kingston, who was just our caller. Just a minute. He said, I forgot to mention, he's from Seattle. So Kingston from Seattle. Kingston from the King City out there in Seattle. What did he say here? Again, one more time. Think when we pull our starters out, our defense still needs to be better, and the depths is good to play that bad. Yeah, I thought when it got to that point, what was that? Like after the Dante Moore interception, once you got into the fourth quarter, essentially, the defense specifically, they allowed too many big plays down the field, and they need to be able to prevent that. So is that going to create a thicker line, so to speak, between what the starters were and like, hey, maybe these second, third string guys didn't play as well? We're going to find that out, I think, as it progresses. We got another text coming in here on the TSOW text line. We got no name and no location, so I'm going to do my best with this one. Says TSOW as my first stop. This game was just right. Got the win, but plenty of symptoms for a doctor appointment. Abso-freaking-lutely. They are going to go to the doctor this week. They're going to figure things out. We know now what maybe Oregon has to be able to work on. We didn't know it the first 2 weeks. Now we know. It's good to have that learning experience. It's good to be able to go to the doctor and figure out what you have. Blowouts are nice, but they don't teach you much. Douglas Witt talks about the depth. The Ducks are so deep, he says. Old AC chiming in. As a Duck fan, I'm disappointed with the offensive line and defensive line performance. This Northwestern team sucks, and Oregon looked mediocre. I think they looked mediocre as it pertains to their standard. I don't think Dante Moore looked mediocre in this game. I don't think De'Aaron Hill looked mediocre in this game. I can meet you with the offensive line and the defensive line maybe looking mediocre. If you've been looking close enough at the film, I'm Isaiah World specifically. Now there was a lot of talk from a lot of people I respect that know more about football than I do that talked about, well, just keep an eye on him. Everybody's saying he could be a top 10 pick, a top 15 pick. He could do that, but he needs to get lower. He needs to anchor. He needs to be stronger in his upper body a little bit. He was one guy that I had my eye on. They've got good rush ends. They've got Hubbard and Saka, on both sides, who I thought were really good. Once again, no sacks. That's what you want. And Dante Moore wasn't in a ton of trouble today, but I did see him and a fair amount of other guys. I think Harkey a couple of times, and we knew coming into the season, Harkey wasn't the best pass protector in the world, although I think he'd done pretty well the first 2 weeks. But that was something that I noticed. And we'll see if I go through the rewatch, if I kind of notice and see the same things as well. Old AC says Penn State's going to eat Oregon's lunch if they can't stop the run. Got to get better. Got to use this as a learning experience. Got to go to the doctor, as we just said. They won't accomplish much if they keep playing like this. Strong words today. And I kind of figured that's what was going to happen. And I had stronger words when I came on for my opening monologue, and my takeaways. But I kind of figured that there would be some strong words from the TSOW community here today. Old AC, he's not stopping. We got more. Says, it was Dan's fault. They could not stop the run today. They should have gone man and played the run. Northwestern does not have the passing game to beat you. So that's interesting because I heard Joel Klatt call it out. And he's like, oh, I'm kind of surprised they're not bringing an extra safety into the box. They experimented with some stuff last week, kind of a Tampa 2 type of look where I think they had 3 safeties in the middle. 3 safeties on the field. Did they play Thieneman in the middle, and then the other 2 safeties were more wide towards the boundary? I think that's how it went against Oklahoma State, but I'm kind of surprised that, especially after that first drive in the first quarter, maybe that's too early. Maybe a little bit later on. I'm kind of surprised, especially when Preston Stone was putting the ball into harm's way, and they got a little bit going in the passing game, but it was very clear that Northwestern was going to have more success running the ball than they were going to be throwing the ball throughout this game. I agree with you to a certain extent. That'd be like, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bring a bunch of more guys maybe into the box. So did they respect the pass game? Because there were some plays made by Preston Stone. Maybe, but yeah, that's something that I'll have to keep an eye on that a little bit more during the rewatch and see how that pops out. And here's another commenter. Hey, at least we didn't Clemson it. That's a point that I want to get into right now. And once again, you can text and call into the show 541-357-6390. That's 541-357-6390. Thanks to Kingston for calling in and a couple of texters that we've had, as well as YouTube live chat. But the comment here says, at least we didn't Clemson it. Now, that's kind of a hallmark of Dan. Remember last year against Wisconsin, there's been some other games where maybe they haven't been playing at their best, but they always find a way to not have these bad performances where you come up on the losing end of the stick. Oregon now, I think it's like 33 or 34 consecutive wins over unranked teams. They know they have the talent advantage. They know how deep of a football team that they are, and Dan's team against maybe some of these lower level teams have a way to kind of overcome some of those obstacles and push towards the victory. Doug Witt chiming in. Give props to Dante for being so humble and not doing the pose in post game. I think this whole team knows that this did not live up to their standard. This is not what they expected it to be. And I'm hoping, as I've said multiple times already, I'm hoping that fires them up. I'm hoping that gets them to play at a new level as we continue on throughout the season. Jay Boston says, I was at the game. The run defense needs to tighten up. That has been the mantra of this program. That has been the main point that I talked about in my takeaways, and now a lot of people have talked about as well. Jay Boston said, I agree with Nick P. It felt like Northwestern was averaging 8 yards per carry. They weren't, but at times in those drives, I mean, they just kept going. And it was that Big Ten football style where we're going to run the ball consecutively. We're going to try to wear you down, and we're just going to keep going and going and going a little bit. Was Oregon wore down a little bit? Maybe I'll discover that and exactly what the case was on my rewatch. Ram Spencer coming into the program. Yep, there's some things to clean up, but I'm glad that there's some things to work on. I met some of the attention is going to die back for a minute. Definitely some weak garbage time play in there as well from Ram. Ram says the Northwestern team does not suck. They had a lot of turnovers and then Purdue is a decent. We'll see. I'm curious to see how Northwestern plays the rest of the season after this type of performance. I'll tell you what, I think they beat UCLA. Maybe everybody else on UCLA's schedule is going to beat UCLA. But this is, I think, one thing that we've seen when David Braun has been coach. This team's going to fight. This team's going to claw. This team's going to be resilient. Most definitely. Oregon has some stuff to work on, but when you're trolling your own team, your expectations get a little bit out of hand. I know that there's some people, I think, out there that saw last week's performance, the last 2 weeks, I should say. Last couple of weeks, you got people nationally that are talking about this team a lot more. And then, there's a certain level of expectations that kind of goes along with that. And maybe people forget, oh, yeah, we're going to go through a grind. We're going to have some of those days where not everybody's going to be playing their A-plus game. Where people, like Kingston was just saying, a B- game? Where not everybody's going to be doing, 100-yard performances, 100-yard rushing, receiving performances. They're not going to be driving guys off 3 to 5 yards off the line of scrimmage every single play. And that comes with getting into the Big Ten schedule and playing better teams. So we need to, there's the highs and the lows. And that's what fandom is. That's what college football fandom is. But now I think it's a good point to be able to kind of, okay, there were 2 just performances that were utter beatdowns. And then you had 2 other performances that were, not 2 performances. And then you had this performance where, okay, you started to see maybe some things that didn't look that great. Now we got to take it all into one sample size and break it down. This next week against Oregon State, I think, I shouldn't say it's going to tell us a lot because, I think Oregon's going to go out there and I think they're going to take care of business at home because they play really well at home. But it might tell us a little bit as to how they bounce back from this game against Northwestern. Ram says, and here's the thing about some other teams in college football. Some other teams haven't looked that great. I mean, look at how LSU looked against Louisiana Tech last year. A Ram brings up Penn State here. It's early in the season. It's very early. You're going to go through the highs. You're going to go through the lows. What matters? What matters? Week 3 against Northwestern, you got the win. Great. But in the grand scheme of things, now it maybe doesn't matter as much. What matters is how you're playing, specifically when USC comes to town, Washington comes to town, and then you get to December. If you want to be playing your best at the end of the season in the month of November, that's what truly matters right now. This is a performance where they're going to use it to be able to get better not only for the next couple of weeks, but I think throughout the season as a whole as well. Thanks, everybody, for coming in here to the postgame show. That postgame show out west. Ducks get the win 34-14. The TSOW Token text line is open 541-357-6390. That's 541-357-6390, as well as the YouTube live chat. Giba Gaba coming in the YouTube live chat saying, not a bad time for some adversity. Dan will right the ship. There's no reason to doubt him. This is going to be a big bounce back week coming back for Oregon to see how they play in front of that Autzen Stadium crowd. But like I said before, I think they're going to be all right. I think that they're going to take care of business next week. But this is a great learning opportunity and a great learning experience against a Big Ten opponent to kind of get it done going the other way. Let's go to the TSOW text line right now. This is a texter from before, and I'm trying to find a name and a location, but I can't find one. Anyway, watched the game, and it definitely felt like a letdown game. I don't know, it just seemed uninterested. Just like it seemed slow. Like, that's, I think, the thing that kind of stood out to me. We're so used to, for 20, 25 years or whatever, Oregon just playing fast and playing, doing their thing and showcasing their athleticism and speed. It just, and that was the key to me in my preview. I'm like, hey, let's showcase the athleticism. Let's make them run boundary to boundary. But there wasn't that. But texter saying watch the game, and it definitely felt like it was a letdown game. Just said that. I don't know. Just seemed uninterested. May have been the early kickoff, but regardless, have to show up. Run defense must get better. It must get better. Yep. So thank you for the text. I'm scrolling back and I cannot find a name. The texter is from Virginia. That's what I know. So make sure to leave your name and location when you text in so we don't get those types of situations. But anyway, thank you for chiming in regardless. The Tobalicious 69. Boy, that's a username and a half right there. The game wasn't perfect, but I think it's going to pull them together as a whole. Bring this whole squad together to play better. That's, I think, what we want to see. David from Virginia. There it is. David from Virginia. Legend. Thank you for chiming in here today. But as the Tobalicious 69 sorry, I can't say that username without laughing. I love it. Thanks for bringing a smile to my face. The game wasn't perfect, but I think it's going to pull them together as a whole. Absolutely. I certainly think that's the goal going forward for this Oregon Ducks team here today. What a day it's been. I woke up, didn't get home from work until 2 a.m., what would have been this morning. And then getting up for a noon Eastern kickoff. Whew. It's been a day and a half. I was sleepy. Maybe the team was a little bit sleepy as well. But what happens? What matters? It's what's on the screen right now. 34-14. The Ducks getting the job done. I got some things to do today. I got some things to get done. I want to thank everybody for chiming in here, coming into the live stream, and talking some Duck football here today. So we're going to wrap this thing up right now. 34-14, the final score. Ducks able to get the win coming up on Monday. I'm going to rewatch this game. I'm going to break this film down a little bit more. We're going to hand out some holy Wallawa performances of the week. So come on back, come on by for that. But until next time, I'm Ted LaRue. We will see you in the next edition of That Show at West. Have a great finish to your weekend. Have a great Saturday, Sunday, and we'll see you on Monday.